It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon when Officer Rodriguez was driving through Oakwood Heights, one of the nicest neighborhoods in the city. The houses here were big, with perfect lawns and expensive cars in every driveway. He had been patrolling this area for 3 years and nothing much ever happened here. That's when he saw something that caught his attention. A young black teenager was sitting in a shiny black BMW outside Tony's corner store. The boy looked about 17, wearing a nice jacket and jeans. But something about the scene didn't sit right with Rodriguez. In his mind, this kid didn't belong in this neighborhood, and he definitely didn't belong in that expensive car. Rodriguez pulled his patrol car over and got out. His hand automatically moved to his radio as he walked toward the BMW. The teenager, whose name was Kevin Washington, was just checking his phone while waiting for his dad to come out of the store. Kevin had no idea what was about to happen. "Hey, you," Rodriguez called out, his voice sharp and demanding. "Step out of the car, now." Kevin looked up, confused. "Excuse me, officer. Is there a problem?" "I said get out of the car," Rodriguez repeated, his tone getting more aggressive. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Kevin's heart started beating fast. He had never been in trouble with the police before. He was a good student, played basketball, and had never even gotten a speeding ticket. "Sir, this is my dad's car. I'm just waiting for him. He's inside the store." Rodriguez didn't believe him for a second. In his mind, he was looking at a car thief who was trying to talk his way out of trouble. "Sure it is," he said sarcastically. "That's what they all say. Now get out before I have to drag you out." Kevin slowly opened the car door, his hands shaking slightly. "Officer, I can show you my license. I can prove this is my dad's car. He's Captain Washington from the downtown precinct." "Yeah, right." Rodriguez laughed coldly. "And I'm the mayor. Stop lying to me, kid." By now, people walking by had started to notice what was happening. A few pulled out their phones and began recording. They could see that something wasn't right about this situation. The teenager wasn't acting like a criminal. He was polite, scared, and trying to cooperate. "Please, officer," Kevin said, his voice getting quieter. "Just let me call my dad. He can clear this up in 2 minutes." Rodriguez wasn't having it. In his eyes, Kevin was just another young black man who didn't belong in this nice neighborhood. He had already made up his mind about what was happening, and nothing Kevin said was going to change it. "Turn around and put your hands on the car," Rodriguez ordered, reaching for his handcuffs. "You're under arrest for auto theft." The small crowd that had gathered gasped. This was going too far and everyone could see it. But Rodriguez didn't care about the witnesses or their phones. He was convinced. Kevin slowly turned around and placed his hands on the warm metal of the BMW. His mind was racing, trying to understand how this normal day had turned into a nightmare. He could hear people around him talking, some saying this wasn't right, others recording everything on their phones. Rodriguez started searching Kevin's pockets, roughly patting him down like he was a dangerous criminal. From Kevin's wallet, he pulled out a student ID card from Riverside Academy, one of the most expensive private schools in the city. Instead of realizing his mistake, Rodriguez became even more suspicious. "Where did you steal this from?" Rodriguez demanded, waving the ID card in the air. "This is a fake, isn't it?" "No, sir, that's my real ID," Kevin said, trying to stay calm even though his heart was pounding. "I'm a junior there. I play on the basketball team." Rodriguez also found Kevin's driver's license, which clearly showed his name and address. But instead of checking the car's registration against Kevin's information, he just assumed everything was fake. His mind was already made up, and he wasn't going to let facts get in the way. "Nice try, kid," Rodriguez said with a smirk. "These fake IDs are getting better these days. But you're not fooling me." An older woman in the crowd called out, "Officer, maybe you should just check the car registration. If it's stolen, it'll show up in your system, right?" Rodriguez turned and glared at her. "Ma'am, I know how to do my job. Please step back." Kevin tried one more time. "Officer Rodriguez," he said, reading the name tag on the uniform. "Please just let me call my father. His name is Captain James Washington. He works at the 5th Precinct downtown. He can clear this whole thing up." Stop lying, Rodriguez shouted, grabbing Kevin's arm roughly. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know when some punk is trying to con me? The crowd was getting larger now. People were coming out of nearby stores to see what was happening. Many of them recognized Kevin from the neighborhood. He often came here with his father, and they had seen him around for years. But Rodriguez didn't know any of this, and he wasn't interested in learning. This is crazy, someone in the crowd muttered. That kid lives around here, I've seen him before. But Rodriguez wasn't listening to anyone. He pulled out his handcuffs with more force than necessary. The metal cuffs clicked loudly as he put them on Kevin's wrists, making them tighter than they needed to be. You have the right to remain silent, Rodriguez began, reciting Kevin's rights in a bored, mechanical voice. He had done this so many times before, but never to someone who was actually innocent. Kevin's eyes filled with tears, but he held them back. He didn't want to give Rodriguez the satisfaction of seeing him break down. Around him, he could hear people expressing their anger and disbelief at what they were witnessing. This is going to be all over the internet, someone said, still recording, with their phone. Rodriguez didn't care. In his mind, he had just caught a car thief, and all these people defending the kid were just bleeding hearts who didn't understand how the real world worked. He was proud of 20 minutes later, Rodriguez walked into the 5th precinct with Kevin in handcuffs, feeling like a hero. The police station was busy with its usual afternoon activity, officers filing reports, phones ringing, and people coming and going. Hey, everyone, look what I caught, Rodriguez announced loudly, pushing Kevin forward. Found this kid trying to steal a BMW in Oakwood Heights. Thought he could fool me with some fake student ID. Several officers looked up from their desks. Detective Miller, who had been working on some paperwork, raised an eyebrow. Something about this arrest didn't feel right to her, but she kept her thoughts to herself for now. Kid was sitting in this expensive car, acting all innocent. Rodriguez continued, enjoying the attention. Had some story about waiting for his daddy. Even claimed his father was some police captain. He laughed and shook his head. These kids think we're born yesterday. Kevin stood quietly, his hands still cuffed behind his back. He had asked 3 times during the car ride if he could make a phone call, but Rodriguez had ignored him each time. Now, surrounded by police officers, Kevin felt more alone than ever. Sergeant Thompson at the front desk started processing the paperwork. What's the kid's name? He asked, not looking up from his computer. Kevin Washington, Rodriguez replied. At least that's what his fake ID says. Sergeant Thompson's fingers paused over the keyboard. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. He had been working at this precinct for 15 years and knew almost everyone who worked there. Meanwhile, across town, Captain James Washington was finishing up a community meeting at the local high school. He had been talking to parents and teachers about the police department's new youth outreach programs. As he walked to his car, he noticed several missed calls on his phone from Kevin. That was strange. Kevin was usually good about staying in touch, but he rarely called multiple times unless something was wrong. Captain Washington tried calling back, but the phone went straight to voicemail. A worry started growing in his chest. Back at the station, Kevin finally spoke up. Sergeant, please can I make my phone call now? I've been asking for over an hour. Rodriguez rolled his eyes. Give him his call, Thompson. Let him waste some poor person's time with his sob story. But before Sergeant Thompson could respond, his computer screen lit up with an alert. He was running Kevin's license through the system and something unexpected popped up. The address on Kevin's license matched an address in the police database, an address belonging to one of their own officers. Rodriguez, Sergeant Thompson called out, his voice suddenly serious. Come here, look at this. Rodriguez walked over, still confident in his arrest. But as he read the computer screen, his face started to change. The license wasn't fake, the address was real. And according to the system, Kevin Washington lived at 1247 Maple Street, the same address registered to Captain James Washington. This has got to be a mistake, Rodriguez muttered, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. At that exact moment, Captain Washington was using the BMW's GPS system to track his car. The screen showed his vehicle was at the 5th Precinct, his own workplace. Confused and now very worried, he immediately started driving toward the station. Inside the precinct, Sergeant Thompson was putting the pieces together. "Rodriguez," he said quietly. The front doors of the 5th Precinct swung open with a bang, and Captain James Washington strode in with the kind of authority that only comes from 25 years of police work. He was still in his dress uniform from the community meeting, his captain's bars gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Every conversation in the station stopped. Officers looked up from their desks, phone calls were put on hold, and even the usual chatter died down. Captain Washington commanded respect from everyone in the building, and his presence always had this effect. "Where's my son?" he asked in a voice that was calm but carried the weight of command. Sergeant Thompson's face went white. Detective Miller dropped her pen. Rodriguez felt his stomach sink to his boots. Suddenly, everything clicked into place, and everyone in the room realized what had happened. "Captain," Sergeant Thompson stammered. We didn't know." Captain Washington's eyes scanned the room until they landed on Kevin, who was still standing near Rodriguez's desk in handcuffs. For a moment, the captain's professional composure cracked, and pure fatherly concern showed through. "Kevin, are you hurt?" he asked, moving quickly toward his son. "I'm okay, Dad," Kevin replied, but his voice was shaky. "I tried to tell them who you were, but nobody would listen." The silence in the station was deafening. Rodriguez stood frozen, watching. His career flashed before his eyes. He had just handcuffed and arrested the son of one of the most respected captains in the entire police department. Captain Washington turned to face Rodriguez, and the look in his eyes was something none of the officers had ever seen before. It wasn't just anger. It was disappointment, sadness, and a deep hurt that cut much deeper than rage. "Officer Rodriguez," the captain said, his voice steady but ice-cold. "Would you like to explain to me why my son is in handcuffs in my own precinct?" Rodriguez opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? That he thought a well-dressed teenager sitting in his own father's car was a criminal? That he ignored every piece of evidence that proved Kevin's innocence? Detective Miller quickly stepped forward and removed Kevin's handcuffs. "I'm so sorry, Captain," she whispered to Kevin as the metal restraints fell away. "Dad, I was just waiting for you at Tony's store like we planned," Kevin said, rubbing his wrists, where the handcuffs had been. "Officer Rodriguez saw me in the car and just assumed I had stolen it. I tried to tell him it was your car. I tried to tell him you were a police captain. He wouldn't listen to anything I said." Captain Washington nodded slowly, taking in every word. His jaw was clenched tight, and the other officers could see he was fighting to control his emotions. "So let me understand this," the captain said, turning back to Rodriguez. "You saw a young man sitting in a car minding his own business, and your first assumption was that he was a criminal? You didn't check the registration. You didn't verify his story. You didn't even run his license properly. You just decided he was guilty based on what exactly?" Rodriguez finally found his voice, but it came out as barely a whisper. I thought, in that neighborhood." "You thought what?" Captain Washington's voice rose slightly. "You thought my son didn't belong in a nice neighborhood? You thought he couldn't possibly own or have permission to drive a nice car." The truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Everyone in the room knew exactly what Rodriguez had thought, and why he had thought it. It was the kind of thinking that had no place in police work, but happened far too often. Captain Washington looked around the room at his fellow officers. "This is my son," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "He's 17 years old. He gets straight A's in school. He volunteers at the community center. He's never been in trouble in his life, and one of our own." Within 24 hours, the cell phone videos from Tony's corner store had spread across social media like wildfire. The footage was clear and damning. It showed Officer Rodriguez treating Kevin roughly, ignoring his polite explanations and refusing to listen to witnesses who tried to defend the teenager. Chief Patricia Hayes called an emergency meeting the next morning. She had been police chief for 8 years and had worked hard to build trust between the police department and the community. This incident threatened to undo years of progress. "This is exactly the kind of behavior that destroys public trust," Chief Hayes said, addressing a room full of senior officers. "We cannot and will not tolerate racial profiling in this department." Officer Rodriguez was immediately suspended without pay pending a full internal affairs investigation. The videos provided clear evidence of misconduct, and several witnesses had already contacted the department to give their statements about what they saw. Captain Washington sat in his office, staring out the window. He had spent his entire career trying to be a good police officer, trying to build bridges between the police and the community. Now he was facing the painful reality that even his position and reputation couldn't protect his own son from prejudice within his own department. Kevin returned to school the next day, but the experience had changed him. His classmates and teachers had seen the videos online, and everyone was talking about what had happened. Some of his friends' parents called to express their support, but Kevin could see the worry in their eyes. If this could happen to a police captain's son, what about their own children? "I keep thinking about all the young people who go through this same thing," Kevin told his father over dinner a few days later. "But they don't have a dad who's a police captain. What happens to them?" This question hit Captain Washington harder than anything else. He realized that his son was right. For every Kevin Washington who had a father in a position of power, there were countless other young people who faced the same treatment, but had no one to protect them. The investigation moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and Rodriguez's own police car camera had recorded audio of his dismissive comments about Kevin's explanations. Within 2 weeks, Rodriguez was terminated from the police force. But Captain Washington knew that firing one officer wouldn't solve the deeper problem. He requested a meeting with Chief Hayes to discuss systemic changes to prevent similar incidents in the future. "We need better training," he told the chief. "We need officers to understand that their unconscious biases can hurt innocent people. We need to create a culture where officers like Rodriguez feel comfortable questioning their assumptions instead of acting on them." Chief Hayes agreed, and together they developed a new training program focused on recognizing and addressing racial bias. They also created a community oversight board that would review complaints about officer conduct. Kevin decided to turn his painful experience into something positive. He started speaking at police training sessions, sharing his story with new recruits. His message was simple but powerful. Before you make assumptions about someone, take a moment to really see them as a person, not as a stereotype. 3 months after the incident, Kevin stood in front of a room full of new police officers at the training academy. He was nervous, but he knew his story could make a difference. "I'm not here to make you feel bad about being police officers," he told them. "I'm here because I believe most of you became cops to help people and protect your community. But I want you to understand that your assumptions about people can cause real harm, even when you think you're doing the right thing." Captain Washington watched from the back of the room, proud of his son's courage and maturity. The teenager who had been handcuffed and humiliated just months before was now teaching grown adults about dignity and respect. The changes weren't perfect, and there was still work to be done. But Kevin's experience had started important conversations about fairness, justice, and the responsibility that comes with wearing a police badge. Sometimes the most painful experiences